Hey everybody, so we're going to be taking a look at 10.5 today. So as we kind of open up our notes here and we look at 10.5, our learning target for today is I can factor a trinomial with a being equal to 1, okay? And what that means when we talk about a being equal to 1 is we're going to have a polynomial that's going to look a little something like this. X squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so that a is always that number out in front. We don't have one out here. Later in the week, we will talk about what happens when there is a number out in front. Okay, but right now we are not going to look at that right now. So just that x squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is when we factor an expression. Okay, that means that we are going to write it as the product, and product, remember, means multiply, of two expressions. Okay. So to factor a trinomial in the form x squared plus bx plus c, which we kind of already talked about, we can unfoil. So we talked about foiling or using the box method last week, okay, but now we're going to talk about kind of doing the reverse. Okay, so we'll unfoil here. Okay, so previously we took this part right here. Give me 1 second. We took this part right here. You were given this and used your foil or your box method to get there. Okay, now we're going to do the flip side where we're going to have this, and we're going to find a way to get over here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look for two numbers, okay, that we're going to call P and Q, okay, where that P and plus Q add to our B, so that middle number, and our P times our Q multiply to our C. Okay, so what we're going to do, okay, is when we set this up, okay, when we factor and there's no number out in front here, we're going to use the diamond or the X method. Okay, so when we do this, I'm going to set up this x here. Okay, and that b value, okay, so that b is going to go on the bottom here. And my c value is going to go on the top. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my factor sheet. So that factor sheet that you guys have, okay, I gave that to you out already, so you should have that. Okay, I'm going to look for two numbers. P and Q are just arbitrary variables here. So I'm going to look for two numbers here that will add to B. So I'm going to put P and Q here. So I know that P plus Q should add to whatever that B value is. And I know that they should multiply to that C. So we'll do P times Q is equal to C. Okay, and what we're going to do then is once I find out what those factors are, so you'll look at the factors of C here, okay, and figure out which one of those factors adds to B. Okay, and we'll kind of work through some examples here, and that will then take you to x plus whatever p is and x plus q. Okay, a couple helpful hints here as we go. Okay, again, that factor sheet is going to be really, really important. Okay, so the first thing here is I'm just going to do this off to the side, and I want you guys to just kind of keep this in mind here as we go. Okay, if I know that I have a positive c on the top and a positive b on the bottom, that tells me that my two factors are both going to be positive numbers, because the only way to multiply to get a positive on the top and to get and add to a positive is by two positive numbers. Okay, so a positive times a positive is a positive, and a positive plus a positive is a positive. Okay. Now, however, if we have a positive on the top and a negative on the bottom, that tells me my two factors will be negative. Okay, because a negative times a negative gets us a positive on the top, and a negative plus a negative just gets you a bigger negative that exists on the bottom. Okay, now what happens if I have a negative on the top? Okay, let's talk about that. So we're going to talk about our two scenarios here. Okay, so if I have a negative on the top, okay, let's talk about the case where I have a positive on the bottom and the case where I have a negative on the bottom. The only way to multiply to get a negative number, okay, is through one positive and one negative. If they're both negative, it's positive. If they're both positive, it's positive. Okay, so let's talk about one of each. Okay, so I've got a positive and a negative. So if I kind of figure out what some of those factors are, okay, if they add to a positive number, that would tell me that my positive number is going to be larger. Okay, so if my answers were 8 and 2, I would know that the 8 would have to be the positive one, okay, because it is larger. And if it's a negative on the top and a negative on the bottom, still you have one of each, but now your negative would outweigh it. This would be your larger number. And if you guys look around, okay, on the right side of my classroom, you guys should see a diagram that does represent this same type of thing, okay? So we're going to take a look at a couple examples here. We have 6 examples to go through today, okay, that are going to help us and teach us how to factor. Okay, so our first example is x squared minus 7x plus 12. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to set up my diamond here, or my x. So I'm going to set this up here, okay? My c, my constant, with no x attached, always goes on the top. Okay, so I'm going to put 12 on the top. Okay, and then I'm going to put my b, my negative 7, on the bottom. Okay, so as you go ahead and look at this, you're going to go to your factor chart, and you're going to look for factors of 12. Okay, and factors of 12 are 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. Okay, so now thinking about this, what of these combinations here is going to multiply to 12, which I know all of these pairs will. Okay, this one, and this one, those are all grouped together. Okay, but which of these is going to add to negative 7? Okay, so first off, I have a positive on the top. Okay, so a positive on the top tells me that my 2 signs on the side have to be the same. Okay, and then I have a negative on the bottom, which would then tell me that both of those signs, if I go back and I look, positive on the top, negative on the bottom, that tells me both my factors are negative. Okay, so I know that when I do this, both of my factors are going to be negative. Okay, so if I put negative numbers out in front of these, okay, all of these multiply to 12, okay, but negative 1 plus negative 12 is negative 13, so it's not that one, okay? Negative 2 plus negative 6 is negative 8. We're getting closer, but still no. And then negative 3 plus negative 4 does get us that negative 7. So that tells me my factors are going to be negative 3 and negative 4. Okay, so now that last piece is I just want to write my 2 factors. So it's going to be x minus 3. Okay, and then it's going to be x minus 4. And those are my 2 factors. Okay, and if I'm not feeling super confident in this, I can always go ahead and either FOIL or box method, okay, to make sure that this does indeed match. Okay, so let's take a look at that quick. If I were to set up my box method, I have x minus 3 and x minus 4. X times x is x squared. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. X times negative 4 is negative 4x. And negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12. Again, combine my like terms. I get x squared minus 7x plus 12. So that does match. Cool. Okay, so that tells me that my 2 factors here are going to be x minus 3 and x minus 4. Let's try another one. So I start by setting up my diamond. Okay, again, constant goes on the top here. So here's my 8. Okay. My 6 goes on the bottom, so 6. So I'm looking for 2 factors that multiply to 8 and add to 6. Okay, positive on the top, positive on the bottom. That tells me both my factors should be positive. So thinking about my factors at 8, it's 1 and 8, 2 and 4. Okay, so 1 plus 8 is equal to 9, so not that one. 2 plus 4 gets us 6. There we go. So our factors are 2 and 4. So I write out my 2 factors, x plus 2, because it's positive, and x plus 4. Again, maybe we're not sure. Okay, we used the box method last time. Let's check the FOIL method here. First, x times x is x squared. Outside x times 4 is 4x. Inside 2 times x is 2x. And last, 2 times 4 is 8. Combine like terms in the middle. X squared plus 6x plus 8. There we go. Okay, so again, our answer is those two factors. So x plus 2 and x plus 4. All right, try a couple different ones here. Okay, now my constant is negative 12, so that sign that's out in front comes with. So I've got negative 12, and then I've got negative 4 here. Okay, so looking for factors of negative 12, I'm going to really just go to that factor chart, and I'm going to look for factors of 12. We already found them before. 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Okay, I've got negative on the top. Okay, so that should tell me that I should have one of each. Okay, that bottom number being negative, okay, takes me right here, tells me that the larger of the two numbers should be negative. Okay, so as I go and I look at this, I know that I'm going to have one of each, one positive, one negative, but my bigger number should be negative. Okay, so this one will be positive, this one will be negative. Smaller number is positive, bigger number is negative. Okay, and which one of these is going to add to negative 4? So 1 plus negative 12 is negative 11, not that one. 2 minus 6 is negative 4. There we go. Okay, let's check and make sure the other one. Okay, negative 1, not that one. Okay, and again, you guys will get to a point too where you won't necessarily need to kind of map this out as much, and you can kind of look at your options and kind of figure it out as we go. But it's good to kind of visualize for now, just as we're in the beginning stages of factoring. So it finds out, okay, that my two factors are positive 2 and negative 6. Okay, so let's take a look. Is positive 2 times negative 6 negative 12? The answer is yes. Okay, and is positive 2 plus negative 6 negative 4? The answer is also yes. So I take my factors. So it's going to be x plus 2 and x minus 6. And there we go. Again, you can FOIL or box. We've done that a couple times, but you do not have to at this point. Okay, last one with these kind of groups, and then we'll try something new. Okay, looking for factors that multiply to negative 8. Negative 8 goes on the top. Negative 2 goes on the bottom. So looking for factors, okay, that multiply to negative 8, add to negative 2. Again, that negative is on the bottom. So that tells me that my bigger number should be negative. So looking at factors of 8, 1 and 8, 2 and 4. Okay, my bigger number, because that bottom number is negative, my bigger number should be negative. It outweighs it. Positive 1 minus 8 is negative 7. No, thank you. Okay, and positive 2 minus 4 is that negative 2. There are my two factors. Positive 2 and negative 4. So when I write out those factors, it's x plus 2 and x minus 4. So you guys will leave the x's in there. Your two factors just kind of get thrown in next to your x's. All right. Look at that. Good work. All right, last section here, okay? Now, all of a sudden, there's this number out in front. Oh, no, what are we going to do? Okay, however, in 10.4, we talked about taking out a greatest common factor. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to see, is there a greatest common factor that goes out of there? So the smallest of my greatest common factor here is 2. Okay, so the only thing I could take out is a 1 or a 2, and a 1 really isn't going to do a whole lot, so we're going to try to take out a 2. Are all of these numbers divisible by 2? It looks like they are. Okay, so I'll divide all of these numbers by 2. Okay, now the important part is that this greatest common factor is going to come out, but you don't want to forget this, okay? So we're going to make a little note here, okay, that we're going to want to remember this. Because if we don't put it in there, we're going to miss something important at the end. Okay, so if I divide by 2, okay, then what's left, after everything's divided by 2, 2x squared divided by 2 is just x squared. Negative 24x divided by 2 is negative 12x. And 70 divided by 2 is positive 35. So now what I'm going to do is now I'm going to factor this inside segment here. So I'm going to factor this group in here. Okay, so I'm going to set up my diamond here. And And I'm going to be looking for factors of 35 that add to negative 12. Okay, again, positive on the top, negative on the bottom. That should tell me that my two factors should be negative. Negative times a negative is a positive. So we'll look for factors of 35. Factors of 35 are 1 and 35, and 5 and 7. Okay, again, they're both negative. So negative 1 minus 35 is a negative 36, so that's not it. Let's hope this other one works. Negative 5 minus 7 is negative 12. There we go. So it's negative 5 and negative 7. Okay, so now I found out, hey, my factors are x minus 5 and x minus 7. Okay, but we need to remember to bring that greatest common factor down. Okay, because if I multiply out, I'll get that inside grouping. I'll get this part right here. Okay, but that doesn't match our final answer here. Okay, so what we need to do is I need to bring that 2 all the way down, and that greatest common factor is just going to stay out in front. So we'll make a little note, GCF stays in front. Okay, it doesn't go inside of your parentheses. Okay, so this is going to be our final answer. 2 times x minus 5 and x minus 7. Let's try this same one. Okay, it looks like all of these here. Okay, let's see what goes into 10, 60, and 70. My smallest number of those is 10, so I'm either going to try to take out my factors of 10 are 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. Okay, again, you want to take out the biggest one that you can. So are all of these numbers divisible by 10? Because that's the biggest number that we have. And it looks like yes. Okay, so I'm going to divide all of these by 10. So my greatest common factor comes out in front, which is 10. Okay, and then what's ever left over is going to go inside of my set of parentheses. Okay, so it'll be our GCF, and then we'll keep those leftovers in there. Similar to what we've already talked about. Okay, so now 10x squared divided by 10 is just x squared. Negative 60x divided by 10 is negative 6x, and negative 70 divided by 10 is negative 7. Okay, so now what's really nice is taking out the greatest common factor. Okay, now there's no number out in front of that x squared. So now we can diamond and go from there. Okay, so I'm going to be looking for factors of negative 7 that are going to add to negative 6. Okay, when I think of factors of 7, it's just 1 and 7. 7's a prime number. Okay, so I have a negative on the top, so that tells me I'm going to have one of each. Okay, but what combination here is going to add to negative 6? So take a minute and think about what sign should you put out in front of each of those numbers in order to get that to be negative 6. And it should be positive 1 and negative 7. Again, you know that that larger number should be negative. So my answer is going to be positive 1 and negative 7. Okay, because those two do add to get you a negative 6. So my factors here, x plus 1 and x minus 7. And then that greatest common factor, don't forget about it, has to come out in front. So it's 10 times x plus 1 and x minus 7. All right, so that is how you factor with a leading coefficient of 1. Okay, when we go through our practice here, okay, you guys are going to work through these 15 problems. Okay, notice that there's a couple on there, okay, that have some numbers out in front, so make sure you're looking for greatest common factors on those. Okay, so go ahead and pull those greatest common factors out and then factor. Okay, but you guys might be asking, hey, what happens, Mr. Zengel, when we take a look at these and I can't take a greatest common factor out, or there's a number out in front with no greatest common factor to pull out? Now that is what we're going to save for our next lesson, where we start talking about a number out in front when a is greater than 1. So we'll come back to that at a future date, okay? But right now we are just going to focus on solving with a leading coefficient of 1 when it just is that x squared out in front. All right, if you guys have any questions, let me know, and we will talk soon. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.